Sage Wanderer here, and welcome to Civil War Update. I'm reviving this old series that I discontinued due mainly to censorship and shadow banning anytime that was brought up. I started talking about this 8 years ago because I was at ground zero for the genesis of the conflict that we're now seeing there in Portland, Oregon. And I had inside information that led me to believe that it was coming and it was inevitable. At that time, I was seen as a crackpot. I was seen as somebody who was unhinged to suggest that the United States could break out in any kind of conflict over political disagreements. And since that time, we've seen this escalate more and more every year. We came very close to this in 2020, and now it's ramping up again. It gets worse every day, and everyone now is discussing whether civil war is inevitable or not. But before I get too much further into the video, I want to thank all of you who support this channel financially. This channel is supported exclusively by viewers like you. It's your kind donations that keep lights on here in the cabin and keep this one-man operation on the air. Thank you for your kind support. God bless every one of you. If you would like to become a financial supporter, you will find links in the description below to Cash App, to PayPal, and to my post office box. And if you get anything out of these videos, if you're inspired, educated, entertained, please consider dropping me some financial support through the links in the description below. Okay, so when I started talking about this, everyone thought I was crazy. And but since then, it's become more and more real until it's a topic of public discussion. And so where are we at now? What is to come in the future? Where is this headed? Well, these protests, like the No Kings protests that just occurred this weekend, that even had 2,500 people protesting in Oklahoma City, of all places, deep in the heart of Trump country. And these protests that are occurring now are being led by mostly baby boomers. And one thing that I did notice for the No Kings protest day this weekend is there was a noticeable absence of Antifa, the true agitators. And these protesters were organized by and led by typically older baby boomer liberals. And most of them who organize it and who oversee it are people that work for organizations that are political activist organizations that are funded primarily by huge donations from George Soros, who may or may not be a vampire, but I can't prove it. He definitely seems to be still active, and he's very old. He was from the World War II generation. And so his donations, his financial support to these political activist organizations are behind this most recent breakout of protests. But as Tim Pool likes to talk about on his channel, we're coming to the end of protest season. Nobody wants to go outside and stand in the snow and do this kind of stuff. So the summer of protests that I predicted has happened. Some of them were very violent. People were killed. People were arrested en masse. It triggered rebellion on behalf of governors, like the governor in Illinois, the mayors of Chicago and Portland, and open rebellion against the U.S. government, and particularly over the ICE incidents. You know, the mass deportation that Donald Trump ran on to get elected. And so as the protest season winds down and the colder weather comes in, you're going to see a decided shift. This is not the end of this struggle. It's not being shelved. What you'll see is a refocusing onto other methods. Now, what is the goal of some of this stuff? The goal is to spread hate and rhetoric to lower IQ people on the left, to trigger them to do rash and violent things. I would say that most of the violent incidences have been people who are easily influenced by rhetoric. Thinking people tend to go in and research for themselves, and they're not as easily swayed by blatant lies, rhetoric, and conflagration by people that are just trying to stir up a violent response. We know around here on this channel that I have already figured out many years ago, the end game here is not to improve our government. It's not to even take over our government. It's not even to reshape our government. The goal of these radicals who are so opposed to Donald Trump and who are behind the Antifa slash BLM riots of 2020 and all of the stuff that was going on clear back in 2014, 2015, 2016 in Portland, Oregon. They are communist agitators. They are people who envision a communist utopia. For them to be able to execute their plan, they have to do away with the U.S. Constitution. So simply rearranging the government, simply dealing with the government through legal elections is not something that is even on their radar. It's not even part of their game plan. Their game plan is the total destruction of the American society, to foment a race or economic war between the haves and the have-nots, to stir up violent responses, terrorist activities, targeted assassinations by people that are easily influenced by blatant lies. I'll give you an example. I have a very close friend, an African American woman down in Houston, Lolo. Hey, Lolo, what's up? And she did vote for Trump. I would say that she's like me. She's on some issues center, on some issues center right, and on other issues she's center left. We're very similar politically, but she has her thumb on the pulse of the African American community. And although her life is very multiracial and multicultural, she has some very kind of militant, classic African American politically active friends. And I brought up the Charlie Kirk assassination. And she said, I don't know a whole lot about that. I do know this. She said, black people hate him. All my black friends hate him. And it's because he's so hateful towards blacks. Like he just hates us. He just hates us all. And I was gentle because I'm not trying to stir up an argument with my friend, but I slowly edged into and I did it by questioning. I'm like, well, I'm not a huge fan of Charlie Kirk. He and I disagreed on some religious points, right? But what I always saw was him giving everyone an equal opportunity at the mic. I never heard him say anything that was blatantly racist, especially against blacks. And, I'm going to look into that and see if there's anything to what you said. And I did. And what I discovered is the reason that these African American activists were telling all of their people in these kind of general broad terms that he hated black people was because he was one of these folks that questioned the authenticity and the necessity of the civil rights, or not that one. What is it? The affirmative action, the practice of using race to choose people and not just the content of their character and or their test scores, right, or their qualifications. And so because he was brave enough to question that very established narrative, that meant in their eyes that he must hate all black people, and they spread these lies about him. And it's just like the lies they spread about Donald Trump. And thinking people like my friend can see past that if they have the time and energy to do the research, right? But other people who are easily influenced by rhetoric will take that as fact and believe that Charlie Kirk was a card-carrying member of the KKK, which is just not true, right? And, this kind of rhetoric is meant for the sole purpose of stirring up people who are easily influenced by rhetoric and broad character assassination. And I think this kind of brainwashing is what's been behind most of the leftist violence. Like the individual, they're going to find out, I'm sure, this was politically motivated, the individual who crashed into the gates of the White House with his car. The targeted attempts on Donald Trump, the assassination attempts. The most recent one, they uncovered a sniper's nest. They're calling it a hunting platform or a deer stand. But the position of it looked like it was set up on the tarmac where Air Force One regularly loads and unloads the president. And the Secret Service discovered this sniper's nest. And I'm a firm believer, and beyond a shadow of a doubt, that these people that are committing these atrocities, that are shooting up churches, that are driving their cars into crowded nightclubs in more suburban areas. And there's been a multitude. I could sit down and give you the blow by blow, but you can get that anywhere. In general, this has been on the uptick, and it is politically motivated because of the rhetoric, right? So we're in the bleeding Kansas phase. The first Civil War in the United States was preceded by about a decade of civil violence, citizen against citizen, burning of homes, tarring and feathering people, hangings, shootings, skirmishes, and it wasn't until later that the states themselves got involved. And once again, that fight was over an unpopular president who seemed to be a problem for a portion of the country. And this kind of chaos has engulfed Donald Trump since day one, and he's definitely a catalyst and an easy target for these people to stir up rebellion. And so that's what's behind the protests. That's what's behind these seemingly random acts of targeted violence. And it does take two to tango, and we've not seen the response from the right. And I pray that we figure this out another way, because when that starts to happen, this will escalate and become a much bigger story and a much bigger problem. And but as the protest season, as Tim Pool likes to call it, comes to an end and the weather changes and people don't want to stand out there and freeze to death or stand in the rain or snow for political rallies and whatnot, you'll see a shift. The rhetoric will continue through online means, through the spreading of disinformation and blatant lies and propaganda. And that will continue to trigger and escalate some of these people who are attention seekers, who will commit random acts of violence, shooting up Christian schools or churches, attacking, Trump supporters wherever they can find them. Um, you know, this kind of violence is going to continue to escalate despite the end of the protest season. But what's really going to ramp up is the rebellion by liberal governors like the governor of Illinois, the mayor of Dallas. I mean, not Dallas, excuse me. Hey, that could happen. I don't know. No, the mayor of Portland, rather. I just got back from Dallas. So, nonetheless, this this rebellion by state governments against federal intervention, also activist judges who will overstep their legal authority, will do things without due process, use and abuse their authority to try to stop Donald Trump from sending in troops into some of these troubled cities, or sending in the National Guard, or federalizing the National Guard in the local area. And these governors, like the governor in Illinois, have been openly making statements and also been filing lawsuits, been pulling in favors to do anything and everything they can to thwart Donald Trump's attempt at fulfilling his promise to deport all of the illegal aliens in the United States, especially and starting with the criminal ones. And these people are defending criminal behavior. They're defending violence for political means. Politicians, members of the press, people in Hollywood, famous people are all defending this political violence. And in doing so, they're legitimizing it and fomenting it and causing more of it. And so recently, just this weekend at one of the No Kings protests, a man took the microphone and he openly stated that it was time for people to arm themselves and to shoot and unalive ICE agents. Now, if one of us said something even similar to that, if any Trump supporter said anything even similar to that, the FBI would be all over them in the blink of an eye. But I'm going to follow this story. But as far as I can tell, he's not been visited. Nobody's done anything. And that kind of violent rhetoric and call for violence is at the limit of the First Amendment. You have the right to freedom of speech. You don't have the right to call for the deaths of your political enemies in a specific way like that. So this man should be locked up. He should be put in prison immediately. He should be charged with crimes. And we'll see if that even happens. In Portland, for instance, instead of arresting the violent Antifa members that are attacking the ICE facilities, they're arresting the peaceful Trump supporters that are there to speak their mind and stand up to these anti-ICE protests that are happening in Portland. And in one case, in a couple of cases here recently, one of these Trump supporters was brutally assaulted by Antifa, and when he went to report it to the Portland police, they arrested him. This happened twice. Two different people got this kind of treatment. And it's to the point where people have realized that these police forces in these blue cities, in these left-wing leaning cities, have been infiltrated by political activists who are closet communists, who took an oath to the Constitution to uphold it, but it's a Constitution they want to destroy and see done away with, so their oath meant nothing. And one commentator said, asking the Portland police to arrest Antifa is like asking Antifa to arrest Antifa. So we have a problem in our local governments, in our state governments, and they are in conflict with our federal government over these deportations and over politics in general. And really, it's just, fourth stage Trump derangement syndrome. And these governors and these mayors and city council members and chiefs of police around the country who are violating their own oath to the Constitution and their duty to their constituents, their duty to the American people to protect them and keep them safe. These people that are violating known ethics, rules, and in some cases laws, are finding themselves at odds with the federal government. And so where do we go from here? What's next? Well, it starts with discontent. Then it goes on to slander and character assassination. And then that moves into these violent protests, destruction of private property. We've seen all of this. It's something I predicted years ago. It's played out just like I said, but maybe stretched out over time. I thought this would happen faster. That's the main thing. The main mistake I've made is the timing. And but the sequence of the events are something that I have predicted all along successfully. And so what we're looking at is this escalation from violent protests to acts of random violence, like the man that crashed into the White House, like the attempted assassinations on Donald Trump and the successful assassination of Charlie Kirk. We're going to be seeing more and more of this kind of behavior. And I know a lot of you think that there's a particular foreign government who pretends to be on our side, who is potentially backing some of this, promoting it, or even behind it. And I am not convinced of that, but on the other hand, well, it makes perfect sense, right? That they would at least be involved in facilitating anyone who wanted to cause chaos in America. Many countries see anything bad happening to the United States as benefit to them, as something that they benefit from. Tear down the United States and they get to pull themselves up a higher notch. And so it wouldn't surprise me if foreign agents aren't fomenting this, equipping these people. We know that George Soros and Act Blue and some of these other political activist organizations are getting big money from big millionaires, and because it's the elite's plan, right? And the communists don't even realize that once they manage to tear it down, they won't be allowed to take power, right? They're pawns. The elite's intention is to destroy the United States and turn it into a third world country, a war-torn country, and to destroy our economics, to destroy our power throughout the globe, giving them an opportunity to seize more power. And so they don't even care whether the United States survives or not. They're just trying to bring us low. And so these people who are idealists, who think that if they tear the United States government down, if they destroy our culture, that they can rebuild something, a communist utopia, I think these people are short-sighted and probably very ignorant, because the powers that be do not want that, right? They're using them like pawns. The ultimate goal is to destroy the United States and make it a non-player in the international community, or maybe even bring it under UN control. Well, Sfali, right? Her endgame that she told me the Illuminati wanted was to tear the United States down through a single event or a series of violent, chaotic events that causes people to lose faith in the government, and then they would just emerge as the people who are now in charge. And I think that is more closely aligned to the elite's plan for the United States. And these riots and these targeted assassinations, these politically active governors who are in rebellion to the United States, is all about an attempt to bring chaos to the United States so that we become a non-player in the world, to rob us of our influence and our power and authority. And it's going quite well, right? They're succeeding on so many levels. And so, what is next? Well, I'm predicting that by the end of next summer's summer of protest, and they're going to do this again next summer, nearing more towards and aligned with the next election for president, and maybe even possibly as soon as the midterms, what you will see is a open exchange of force between local police forces and federal agents. This is already brewing in Portland. They are not working together in Portland. They are not friendly with the Portland police. The Portland police are on the side of these protesters, of Antifa and the violent protest at the ICE facilities, and they're protecting them. In many cases, someone will do something worthy of being arrested for, and before the feds can lay hands on them and arrest them, the Portland police will run in and arrest them, but then take them around the corner, take the cuffs off of them, and let them go. Right? That there's literally obstruction of justice happening openly by the Portland Police Department. And you're going to see this in every blue city around the country. And at some point, you're going to have a Lexington and Concord moment when the federal government believes they have jurisdiction, rightful authority, and the local police, the local authorities, the governor or the mayor, or a combination of those people working together, are going to stand their ground against federal troops, and you will have an exchange of fire. When that happens, then that will be the first domino in a series of dominoes that will fall rather quickly. All of this will look like a slow burn, slowly evolving over many years problem until that moment, the shot heard around the world, when federal agents and local police engage in some kind of armed conflict against each other. And once that happens, then that's the first domino in a succession of events that will happen really quick compared to the rest of this. And what you'll see is secession from the states, right? You will see borders around states being taken control of by local governments, and they're not allowing federal agents to come into the country to begin with. They might take control of airports. They might quarantine military bases and put a ring of checkpoints around them so that no one who's not approved can come and go. And this is going to lead to a response. And if Donald Trump is the president in question when this occurs, and most likely it's going to occur before the end of his term, in my opinion, we're going to have a civil war before the end of his term. But remember, timing is not my thing. Sequential order of events, I'm very good at predicting. But maybe it's my own hot temper and my own decisiveness to take action when needed. I think everyone's like me, and this is going to happen suddenly. But I will say, once the shot heard around the world happens, historically, it's typically a pretty quick ramp up to open war. And it could occur in many different ways. But I do see a division. You know, John Titor, one of my favorite time traveler stories, whether he's true or not, he definitely had his thumb on the pulse of American politics and trends, whether he was from the future or just good at guessing. And, he stated that the United States, after these violent situations, a civil war, violent encounters, what would happen is the federal government would somehow fail, and the United States would be broken into 10 regions with each having their own president, and there would be one president who was kind of loosely over all the other ones, but it would be more like ran by a committee than a true executive branch like we have today. And that very well could be the result of the elite's plan to take America low, is to break her up into chunks, break her up into pieces. We could see Chicago being Illinois being its own country. We could see California, at least the southern or middle to southern half of it from San Francisco south, breaking away and becoming their own country. And then anytime you have a civil war, and this is true of the American Revolution, this was also a factor that played into the Civil War. The response by other governments, the response by other nations, their support for one side or the other can tip the course of human history. It can change the course of human history, can tip the balance of power. And so, how foreign nations might approach, or in a supportive role or a rebuking role against one side or the other in this coming civil war conflict that I believe is inevitable, the role that foreign governments play, like the one we kind of loosely mentioned, can't say the name, right? You know who I'm talking about. um, what role that those nations will play in who they support, who they back, not just with political statements, but also with financial backing, and in some cases, actual troops, foreign troops on the ground supporting one side or the other. This has the potential to destroy our country. I'm not in favor of it. I'm simply monitoring the situation, and I'm trying to predict what to expect next. So, as things settle down and focus starts to change from politics to family and holidays, expect the fight by the left to continue to go forward, but it'll be in the courts with activist judges. It'll be in the state houses in blue states. It'll be in city hall in blue cities around the world, and I mean around the country. And at some point, the feds and maybe the Portland police or the Chicago police or the Illinois State Police, there will be some kind of standoff, and this standoff will likely result in the shots heard around the world. We are standing on the precipice of a second civil war in this country. And just because the protests might wind down doesn't mean that the effort isn't still in full swing. The slanderous lies, the propaganda will ramp up as the protests die down. And it will continue to build and to exacerbate the existing problem, with their goal being to influenceable people, right? Low IQ people, uninformed people, people who believe whatever they hear because they trust the source. And those kind of folks can be easily triggered into all manner of horrendous behavior. This is what we will expect to see over the next couple of years. Within a year or two, I expect to hear the shot heard around the world and the true beginning of the second civil war in the United States. God save our republic.